Sup, internet world? It's Wyatt reporting to you. It's been a minute. It's been about a year, maybe a year and a half since I made my last YouTube video. That's all going to change. I'm finally set up in a semi-permanent area and studio. So I'll try and post every week about some sort of creative, music producing, songwriting, philosophical something, because that's what's on my mind and that's what I want to share with the world. So if you have any ideas on videos, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. All my info's in the description below. This video is longer than I thought it would be, but I thought I would just dive into the project file for my new song, Something About You. It's on my new record that just came out called Ricky's First Dance. You can listen to it on any streaming platform. I thought I'd just kind of show you my approach, which is a little different than previous albums that I've worked on. Show you the arrangement, some of the instruments, the way I made the song and most of the record. So without further ado, let's just jump on in.
World, it's Wyatt reporting to you from sunny Los Angeles, California. This is the Pro Tools session of my song Something About You, which came out on my last record, Ricky's First Dance. It just came out. I thought I'd do a video on, I don't know, how I made the song, my approach to not only this song, but really the majority of, actually, yeah, the whole record that I just came out with. As you can see, it looks like a denser project than it really is, but it's very simple. A couple synths, a hand-programmed drum machine, vocals, looks like a few guitars. That's really it. This record I approached totally different than my other records. Almost all the channels I used this SSL channel strip. For some reason, when I was messing with these songs and experimenting, I started tweaking that and I just liked the way it sounded. The last time I used this was on a winter record that I produced so many years ago. And I remember really liking it. And then when I came back to it, it just sounded toyish to me, like plasticky. Maybe they fixed some tweaks. Maybe my ears are changing. I don't know. But I really have fallen in love with this channel strip from making this record. So you can see I use that on a lot of stuff. I mean, really a lot of, I would say almost every track on this record. So I'll try and make this video short and sweet. We can start with the top of the list here, which is drums. Drums are always the beginning of my session. It's always drums, bass, synths, and guitars. Typically, I'll throw the master fader in between the instruments, and then below is all the vocals. It's easier to scroll around. You kind of know where you're going. All of this in between here are buses, like global buses, like all vocals, all music, rear bus, which I can explain later on, lead vocal, background vocals, vocal effects, which you can see I'm automating throughout the song. So that's just how I've been organizing my sessions. For my brain, it works. We can start with, let's start with how the song started, which is this synth part. Where is it? Rhythm synth. Yeah, rhythm synth. So this is what started the whole song. It's a loop. It's just a few chords that I played on a keyboard with an auto panner. So here's what that sounds like. You can tell it's, I'm not afraid of the looping effect. It was a little phrase that I kept playing on the keyboard, so I chopped it up, made a loop of it, and wrote a song with that loop, essentially. That loop, that synth is throughout the entire song. Front to back, these little sections here are pre-choruses that I wrote to just shake it up a little bit, throw in some dice, some spice. So there's a little bit of alleviation from the same old. So on that rhythm synth, all I really did was roll off a lot of the low-end frequencies that just didn't need to be there. And I boosted a little bit of upper mids at, 2.5-ish K. That's all I did. Pretty simple. You can tell if I solo this out and I take the EQ off of it, there's a lot more low-end buildup, which in solo sounds better, but in relation to the song, it was just too much. It was too soupy. You'll hear that more when we get deeper into the project, but here was the raw synth. And then here it is with the EQ. So just a little sparklier, a little brighter. From there, I made a beat, which I always, for some reason, tend to get into drums early on. I'm just a drum guy. These drums were sampled from a machine that my dad gave me that he used in the 80s. It's a DXL machine, which I don't know anything about. I can't find any information about it online. But I have this box, and it's not a box you can program. It's a box with chips that you actually have to strike with an electronic pad to hear, to get the audio signal. And so what I did was I grabbed a drum pad, and I hit each drum in this box and created digital samples from that in Pro Tools, and basically just took those samples and made beats for the whole record. You can see, if I zoom in here, these are all the individual transients from the drum machine. The hats, the snare, the kick. And so that's kind of where I started drum-wise. I just really, really like the sound of this machine. It's 8-bit. It's really grainy and squishy sounding. And so I'll just solo out the drums so you can hear what's going on. Here's the drums. Let me get that synth out of here. So a few things going on. The kick drum, really I'm just hyping up some top end just to get it to poke a little harder. But a big thing when doing that is, if you don't add any sort of saturation or distortion after boosting a ton of top end, you're going to get it to just poke too much. It's going to sound too clicky. So a lot of times I'll put a saturation plug-in after I boost a lot of top end on a kick drum to just splay the mid-range out a little more. I normally wouldn't use the decapitator to do that. I'd probably use like a Saturn or a multi-band distortion plugin where I can just do that to the mid-range. But this drum sample in particular is so grainy and 8-bitty just as is. When I was doing that, it was just too over the top. So just a soft little bit of saturation went a long way. The snare drum, just boosting a lot of top end and boosting that fundamental frequency around 150. At least this sample is around 150. Every snare drum is different. Every kick drum is different. But that's all I'm really doing, along with rolling off some sub frequencies. No compression, nothing like that. And similar, I'm just using saturation after the fact to add a little more color. One thing I will say, if you see, these are the two decapitators I'm using. I've noticed if you're using different settings on a same source, there can be weird phase issues. So usually I stick to one setting of the decapitator, one of these, and I just stick to that on the entirety of the instrument that I'm using it on. I guess that would only really make sense on like something like a piano or a drum set or something like that. The hi-hat, just rolling off a bunch of low end, adding some top end. This whole mixing process was very, I don't want to say dumb. I'll say it's very dumbed down compared to what I typically do, which required me to be more creative and make broader strokes, which was fun and interesting. The percussion I played in by hand just using a MIDI keyboard and committed it to audio. All I'm doing here is, again, rolling off low end that doesn't need to be there, adding some sparkle, some top end, and a little bit of compression. You can see it's probably just maybe 3 decibels of compression just to get it to sit easier in the mix. And you can see the level between the left and right signal is pretty off, which was intentional. But when I started to mix the song after the fact, it seemed a little off, too off kilter. So I brought the right side up a little bit in post. Other than that, I mean, there's a reverse sound in the pre-chorus where I'm really just adding a lot of top end. And there's a crash cymbal on the top of each section, which, again, I'm just rolling off low frequencies that don't need to be there. And I'm adding a tiny bit of delay just to add more sustain. So when the crash hits, it's not just a ch, it's more like a ch, if that makes any sense. From there, I am routing the drums into a unprocessed, which is called UP drums, and a processed drums bus. The main thing to consider here is I'm only sending the kick, snare, percussion, that's it, to the processed drums. I don't want to process or parallel compress the hi-hat, crash cymbal, things like that. It just gets, I don't know. For a song like this where it's really about tightness, you just want the close mics. And so you can see here there's a little plus sign. And when you can see I'm sending to both buses simultaneously. And so on the unprocessed bus, it's literally unprocessed. I'm not doing anything to it. On the processed drum bus, I'm using this DBX 160, and I'm going pretty hard. If anyone's familiar with these compressors, they're super attacky. And even just a little bit, I mean, if you're seeing the needle come up to 15 decibels, that's just, being slammed. So let's see what's going on. So, I'm hitting 15 to 20 decibels of compression, which is a lot, but I'm blending it in with the unprocessed. Along with that, I'm adding a little bit of low end and top end after the compressor, just because a lot of times when you are hitting a compressor that hard, you're going to lose a lot of the low and top end. It's going to be a lot of mid-range. So I'm just trying to add that back a little bit. And after that, it's just a little bit of distortion, just a little bit of saturation. These 2 buses here feed into the all drums bus, which is the entirety of the drums. It's the mix of these 2 faders all in one group. And on that group, tape machine, adding some more mid-range, some more bark at 700. I'm adding even more mid-range at 800. Killing some of those uber low frequencies just to buy some more headroom in the speakers. The Pultec, yet again, a little bit of top end, a little bit of bottom end. You can see I'm doing a tiny bit more bump at 700. I'm just trying to get these to, I don't know, feel right, have that barkiness, but also that silkiness and that squishiness. It's just kind of a dance to get it right, and it's kind of silly me explaining. It's kind of silly me explaining this out of context, but that's just, I guess, how it's the easiest way to explain it without making it, into a 2-hour long video. Not really doing anything with this guy. Just looks like a little bit of gain staging. And then I'm throwing this Abbey Roads vinyl plugin on the drum bus, which has been clutch for me. This has just lived on my drum bus for like 2 years now. And so all of this is being sent to a drum reverb, which you can see here is only being sent out of the snare, the percussion, the reverse, and the kick drum. That's all being sent to this drum verb. I used an emulation of a Lexicon 244. This is Native Instruments or Soft Tube's version of it. I really like it. This is the reverb I used. This setting I used on the entirety of the record. It just became part of the drum sound. I couldn't have done it without this reverb, that's for sure. I started with this setting 80s snare, but I tweaked a lot of this stuff. I had to put the depth all the way up, and I had to bring the intensity down a little bit. I had to do a little bit of high cutting, a little bit of pre-delay, just to get it to sit right. But like that 80s snare setting was pretty damn close. I just had to tweak it a little bit. From there, I'm hitting this SSL channel strip and just cutting off low end and actually adding top end to the reverb. Typically, you'd want to cut top end of a verb, but in this instance, I just wanted more sparkle. And then I'm hitting a tape machine after the reverb and EQ. That's it. That's basically the drums. I'll show you what the drums sound like with and without reverb, and you'll be pretty shocked as to how much vibe that reverb brings to the drums. Pretty freaking wild. That's really the drum sound there. That, and let me show you what the parallel drum bus is doing with and without, because that's also massive part of this drum sound. So you can, it adds a lot of weight, a lot of spank. Very necessary. If I took the reverb and the parallel drums off, this is what you get. So necessary, very necessary. From there, I played in a synth bass, which I'm not remembering what synth I used, but this whole record was made with software synths. I did not use one actual real hardware synth on the entire album. So just goes to prove you don't need crazy fancy, synths to have to make a song. You just don't. I'm pretty sure this was probably some form another of a Juno bass. A lot of this record was Juno style stuff and D50 emulation stuff. But the bass goes like this. So it just kind of walks around, Sorry, my computer's so jumpy. This is what I'm doing to the bass. a little bit of compression, a little top end, some mid range, and I'm cutting off just like a crazy. I'm cutting off 16 hertz. I mean, it's almost barely not. I don't even know why I did that. From there, I'm hitting the tape machine. I'm hitting an LA2A pretty hard. Not shy about that. And also hitting this Abbey Roads vinyl plugin. There's something that this plugin does to the top end that it's almost like an oral exciter, but not as linear. I really don't know how to describe it, but I love it on drums and bass. Absolutely adore it. So the bass, let's see how much compression is going on here. So about 10 decibels on the LA2A, which is not out of the ordinary for me. You know, compressing bass is a really important part of getting a mix right, in my opinion. If you over compress, which I'm teetering on that line of over compressing it, you can lose some of the sub frequencies. But if you under compress, you have this really kind of flappy, loose bottom end to your song that just doesn't sound controlled. I don't think about it that much. I just dial it into where I feel like it sounds good with the drums. I would say 70% of the time when I'm mixing a song, I'm just listening to the drums and bass soloed together with maybe one main lead vocal in there. That's it. Because if you can get that to sound good and feel good, you're already on your way to the mix being complete. So let's get the drum and bass in here, and I'll kind of show you what that feels like. So, you know, that was the majority of the mix, honestly, just drum and bass. And you can see that I have this send here, bus 9 and 10. I'm also using bus 9 and 10 here on the kick drum. And this is another big piece of the mixing process on this record, was malting the kick and the bass guitar into a bus in which I call the rear bus. And that rear bus is being hyper compressed. So you're basically having a low-end compression fader, which can control the tightness and the punch of the low end of the mix. Essentially what it's doing is this natural side chaining of the kick with the bass. So they're playing with each other. One is attacking, one's holding off, and then coming back up when the transient releases from the kick drum. If that makes any sense. This is the compression on the rear bus. But Wyatt, it's clipping. Why is the red line on? I don't give a stop caring about that stuff. If it sounds good, if it sounds right to your ears, just do it. Who cares what lights turn on, how much distortion or how many dB of compression? Doesn't matter. Much better to use your ears than your eyes. So this is a general setting that I do, just the slowest attack and the fastest release on 1176 is a good one because it's so fast and it's so controlling. If I took this out, you may not hear it in context later on. I'll show you now, but later on I'll show you what it sounds like with the rest of the music. It really holds the song together. I mean, it really is like the ground floor of the song. A lot of this record depended on this rear bus. So I'll mute it now so you can hear what it's doing with the kick and bass. And then further on, I'll do the similar thing where you can really hear it in context. like all it just squishes the low end. It kind of marries that kick and bass drum, and it allows the low end to sit tighter. I hear it better on smaller speakers. It pops through a little harder. It's just more controlled. Probably wouldn't work for all genres of music and every single song, but for a song with really heavy kick and bass, something really dancey, something really 2 and 4 heavy, I would recommend trying the rear bus move, because it really allows you to control the low end without having to really do to go too far into multi-band sidechain compressor land, So from there, we got the rhythm synth, which is just basically the loop that I started the song with, the bass, the drums, and then we got this melody. Very simple melody, which I'm stacking on 3 synths here, which I just played in MIDI. You can see I wanted to keep this MIDI so I could show you the synths I used. This is a D50 copy from Roland. This synth I used all over the fucking record. I mean, probably this and a Juno copy was 90% of the record. Love that thing. So this setting, Glam Bell, these FM synths, I don't really mess with the parameters much. I just use the presets. It's kind of fun. I just bank through presets and I'm like, oh, that one sounds funny. And I play it. And I'll stack it with something else. Sometimes I don't stack it. Sometimes I do. But it looks like I started with this one called Glam Bell. And then I go into another D50 on Fantasia, which is a very classic patch. Classic bell synth. And then I'm stacking it once more with a different synth, the JV1080, which is another Secret Weapon software synth I use a lot, on a Fantasia setting that's slightly different. And so together, see if I can get these isolated for you. This is the melody. You can see that little tagline I also stacked with another Fantasia, probably on a different octave, just to add some more. So all I did with these was I threw the SSL channel strip on it, killing a bunch of low end. Looks like a tiny bit of compression, and it's probably what I'm doing on all of these. Yeah. Just on belly airy synths like this, you just don't need all the low end. And so that's all I really did. That's it. And then this acoustic strum is actually a fake acoustic. Right when I was doing this song, I didn't have access to a mic, because I made all this in my bedroom. I didn't really have an acoustic guitar with me. And so when I was demoing this song out, I used this fake acoustic guitar plugin that's MIDI. And it just stayed in the project for so long that I became accustomed to the sound of it. And I just decided not to cut a real acoustic and just keep the fake acoustic. And so, again, SSL channel strip, just killing some low end, adding some top end, and some compression. And it's really funny sounding on its own, but here it is. And then I'll show you what it sounds like raw, just so you have an idea where it started. Just adding some sparkle. A lot of this record is just trying to get it as sparkly sounding as possible. That's really all I was trying to do. I use the same plugin for the pre-chorus, but with a palm muted setting. you can see I'm doing the exact same thing. I just copied the same settings over. And then from there is Guitar Land. I did add 2 real electric guitars. I just plugged DI right into my interface. And I used good old Sans amp as the amp sim. So those guitars is just a left and right kind of chorusy rhythm guitar. I'm just kind of holding the chords down with that rhythm synth. So I have this amp simulator going into just the stock chorus and then going into an SSL channel strip where I'm just, yet again, cutting low frequencies that don't need to be there, adding some mid-range and a little bit of compression. This is what that sounds like. Literally just holding the chords down. It's the same configuration with the pre-chorus here, which is just the palm muted kind of section before the chorus hits. Instead of using a chorus, I used a flanger just to add a kind of a more weirder, spacier sound and a little bit of distortion, but it's the same type of deal. I didn't even use an amp sim. I just used the direct signal. Cutting off low end, adding mid-range, flanger, some distortion, and you end up getting this. And then with the acoustic guitar palm muting, you kind of get that stack, which is what you hear on the song. And then from there is a harmonica solo, because this whole song really is supposed to be cute and bubblegummy. It's a love song. It's really just about meeting someone that you can't get out of your head, where you're so infatuated with this person, whoever it is, that they make your world go round. You can't get them out of your head. So I just wanted it to be a cute sound, and this fake harmonica, which is a harmonica setting patch in this JV 1080 synth, is just so fucking funny sounding. I love it. I just played a really childlike solo on the keyboard. I added some chorus. I dipped some low end. For some reason, this is like one of the only channels I'm not using an SSL channel strip on. A little bit of reverb. Not sure what I'm doing here. Looks like I'm not doing anything there. But this harmonica solo, or sound, I should say, is very funny. This solo is funny too. It's really fucking funny. And then underneath that, I felt like it needed a counter melody underneath the solo because it just sounded a little too samey. So I played, I want to say this is another D50 synth that I committed to audio to save, buffer disk space. And all I did on the CQ is just roll off low ends. It was just another bell whistle type synth. So you'll hear there's this little counter melody underneath the solo, which really kind of ties it all in. And really, that is the music. That's all the music on the record. From there, it kind of goes really just into vocal land. Let let me unsolo all this stuff for you. Goes into vocal land. You can see the buses here. There's an all music bus. We went over the rear bus. That feeds into the all music bus. And there's an all vocals bus, which is separated from the all music bus. And all of these get sent to the master. But the key here is that I'm separating the music and the vocals, which I started doing about a year or two ago. And it allows me to compress the music a little more aggressively and not have the vocals affect that compression. So I can really have the vocals sit on top of the compressed music. So the vocals have a little more dynamic range where the music really holds its ground underneath it. I really love mixing that way. Makes more sense with modern, like I was saying before, anything that's like dancey, sample-based kind of stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily would make sense on like a folk record or something like that. But I've been doing that a lot. So you can see on this music bus, there's a little bit of EQ and compression, and on the vocal bus, there's just a little bit of de-essing. From there, you can see I have a lead vocal bus, which obviously, is the lead part. The background vocals is all the harmonies. And then I have 3 effect sends on my vocals. I have a vocal slapback, a vocal reverb, and a vocal echo. And the echo I'm writing throughout the song in various sections and various parts. We can start with the lead vocal. Let me make sure my mic is on real quick, guys. Sorry. So we start with the lead vocal. What I'm doing is doubling certain phrases and then doubling the choruses. I sang this record a lot differently than my previous records. I sang a lot deeper, lower. I was trying to sound a little croonier. I don't know. I was kind of being a character in my own make-believe world. So I did use some auto-tune, which really helped me land where I wanted to go. This is a pretty standard setting. This song's in C, so it's really easy to lock in. And I just used its slowest setting. I used this basic auto-tune access. Slow setting, humanizing is off, and it's just set to C. That's on all the vocals, the same setting. And just cutting off some low end and compressing. I've noticed that compressing the vocals singularly into the bus allows for a lot more control than trying to compress a bunch of uncompressed vocals on one bus, if that makes any sense. So you'll see on this, background vocals are a little different because they sit pretty far back in the mix, but on a lead vocal, I've been just compressing on each individual channel, and it gives me a lot more control. And so, that's essentially it. On the double is the same setup, except for I added a micro shift, just so there's a little more of a stereo effect underneath the lead. It's something that I do a lot. So let's listen to the lead vocal for a sec.
I can remember in September when I laid my eyes on you, secret lovers.
It sounds like a lot of effects, but in relation to the song, it's really not. Let me take the effects off.
I can remember in September when I laid my eyes on you, secret lovers undercover in a secret rendezvous.
So on the lead vocal bus up here, you can see I've got an SSL channel strip, cutting off low end, adding a little bit of top end, and gating, which is also something that I did a lot of on this record, is gate the lead vocals. So they're very tight. I almost like hearing the gate open and close on a vocal. It adds that kind of hardness that I wanted. From there, I'm hitting Abbey Road vinyl, and I am dipping some weird frequencies, in relation to the rest of the music. Sorry, the computer keeps freaking out. I dipped some mid-range just to, I don't know, there was just some weird tweakiness going on in there later on in the mix. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm sending out to these effects. These effects are pretty basic, a standard kind of slap back where I'm rolling off, doing some filtering and some distortion. The reverb is just a stock hall reverb. This is actually the default setting that Deverb gets you. I used as the default setting when you load it up on the whole record. Filtered the reverb as well. And then on the vocal echo, it's just an H delay in ping pong mode. Also being a little more heavily filtered. And automating that throughout the whole song just to add some life. From there, there's all these background vocals which all get molted into a background vocal bus. This is a mixture of my friend Courtney, who sang on the whole record with me down here, and my vocals as well. Those are all molted into this background vocal bus, which you can see is I'm doing a lot on. Adding a bunch of top end, gating as well, compressing, killing low end. I'm micro shifting to add some stereo wetness to the signal, compressing, adding more color with the vinyl, adding even more top end with the Psy-Q, and then compressing even more with the RVox. So there's 3 compressors, bunch of EQ and sweetening. Sometimes with backup vocals, you really need to do a lot to get them to sound really special with the lead vocal. And so those are the moves I had to do on this song. So let's go to the chorus where all the vocals are in together.
There's something about you, something that makes my world go round. There's something about you, spinning around, around, around.
So just so you can differentiate the lead from the backup, let me take the lead out so you can just hear the backups.
There's something about you. There's something about you.
And so, that's in a very small nutshell the song. If we go to the master bus here, I should say the music bus, very, knifey, peculiar EQ that really just fits for the song. I'm hitting a Pultec, and then I'm compressing with this SSL bus. And you can see how much compression I'm doing on the mix. It's not a whole lot.
There's something about you, something that makes my world go round. There's something about you.
Maybe 2-3 decibels of compression on the music, so not a whole lot. On the vocals, I'm using this Soothe plugin, which is kind of a de-esser. It's like an automated, I guess it's an automated de-esser. You set it to the frequency spectrum you want, and it will extract any harsh overtones. Great for vocals, overhead mics, percussion, things that maybe will poke out a little too hard, and instead of having to go in, with a fucking 10 dB per octave EQ point sweeping back and forth, you can kind of throw this thing on and just mess with a few parameters and fix a lot of problems. It's a real big help. I use this a lot on vocals. Then I'm actually hitting a more classic style de-esser. You can see it working right now while I'm talking. And then using this RC20, for some reason it won't load up, but I'm using the RC20 being automated on and off during the pre-chorus as a filter, essentially. You can hear that in the song pretty well. Then here on the final master bus, I'm having everything hit the tape machine. I'm hitting this volume, I'm just bringing the master volume down, just trying to make sure the gain staging is okay. Adding a touch of 15K, and just killing some uber low frequencies from the mix. Then I'm hitting this virtual bus compressor from Slate Audio. I'm not using it at all for compression, but I'm using it just for the tonal quality that it gives the song by just having the unit on, just having the signal run through it. It adds this kind of forwardness that I can't really explain. Let me play you part of the song so you can hear what's going on when it's popped in and out.
See, there's something about something that makes my world go round. There's something about you spinning around. There's something about you.
It's subtle, and yeah, you could say it's a volume. It's added volume, which it is, but everything moves forward. All the effects seem to be pushed forward. The kick and snare gets pushed more centered. The vocals are more centered. It's very interesting what it's trying, just the circuitry it's emulating. So that kind of just lives on that master bus. And then I have the Oxford Inflator, which is this notorious, plugin. I've been digging it. I got it kind of just to see what the hype was all about. It does something cool. It does really something cool to the top end. I like it. So I've just kind of threw this on at 50%. And I don't know. I just liked it. So left it on. From there, I'm using a stereo widening plugin that's being automated throughout the song. I would say it's not very smart to just throw on a widening plugin and just fucking ripping that thing to 12 and having it on the whole song. Not good. But you can see it's zeroed out. But then when it goes to the choruses, it bumps up. So the left and right sides go even wider. It just kind of opens the chorus up. Let me go to a chorus so you can see what it's doing. Pay attention to this sides knob. That's what I'm automating.
Believe me when I tell you, it's really a secret fantasy. There's something about something that makes.
So you can see it turns on right when the chorus starts, right at that push. So it just kind of lifts it into a little bit of a different dimension.
There's something about something that makes my world.
It's subtle, but it makes a really big difference, especially when you're listening in headphones or an intimate environment. This is a very simple automation move that you can do. That, riding an echo fader, reverb faders, clutch, you can see that up here on the drum verb. I'm also doing very small little automation moves where slightly more reverb in the choruses and then it's drier in the verses. Little things like that make a huge difference. They really do. The other thing I'm using as a automation tool is this filtering here. On the pre-chorus, I scoop out some low and top end just to have it sound a little more funneled. I'll show you what I mean. It'll pop on right at the pre-chorus and then right off in the chorus of the chorus expanding and being larger than life, when really it's because in context that pre-chorus that pre-chorus is just smaller sounding. I'll show you what I mean.
I shouldn't sit and reveal the way you hold your own breath like it's a dream. Believe me when I tell you it's really love, a secret fantasy. There's something about
You know, such a simple thing. You know, you can really do that throughout a mix and get away with being subtle with it and just having certain sections feel more dynamic than others. And you know, this mixed with a widening tool, very, very crucial part of automation, especially for me. And this song it's a major piece to the puzzle. You know, that's really it. Normally I would have a limiter here, but I don't want to, you know, blow your speakers out or, you know, have this video be crazy loud. But typically I'd throw a limiter here and do, you know, either the stock limiter in Pro Tools is great, or the Slate FGX is great. Pro L2 is great. And just getting it up to a more quote-unquote industry standard volume. That's typically where I'll end up. And that's just, I mix into my mastering chain. That's how I like it personally. I just get it to sound how I want, and I don't really need anything else. So I would recommend just messing with shit yourself. But yeah, I mean, this is a general idea of what this song is all about, what it took, the different components to it, the mixing technique, which I went a lot more simple in terms of the approach. Really just using kind of a console style EQ with some saturation, doing some grouping like the parallel drum bus, the rear bus, separating the music and the vocals to where I can compress the music and not compress the vocals so much. Having the effects on their own buses so I can do some automating, things like that. Everyone's different. Everyone's going to have a different workflow. That's just kind of where I landed with this record. I didn't want it to be this, you know, big, daunting mixing project. I just tried to get the sounds the way I wanted from the start, and it was easy to make because I did the entire thing in the box. There's nothing besides the vocal mic and some acoustic guitar, I guess, on some parts of the record. Everything is done just microphone right into the computer, right into Pro Tools. So I hope that answers any questions or was entertaining to some degree. I'll make some more in-depth videos on certain parts of how I mix certain things. And I'll try and get more back into the real instrument world. I know the last few videos I made have been very like electronic based, but I plan on trying to make videos every week. So DM me, hit me up if you have anything you want to talk about or want me to talk about on here. And I hope you have a good night, day, afternoon, you know, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're safe and happy. Toodaloo.